to make that available to the community.
We know that you are working with all the different department heads at the EOC and members of the law enforcement and fire and all the emergency teams. We know that Lee County Sheriff is still taking calls at this time while many other areas are now pulling their crews off. Do you anticipate that that will happen soon as the winds pick up and they will be forced to pull their emergency crews off the streets just to keep them safe?
That's an active discussion that's going on here in the EOC. As you said, some agencies have pulled resources to a place of safety. One of the nuances here is that the winds along the coast are, of course, higher than they are further inland. And so we may be in a situation during periods of the storm where in some areas of the county it's safe for agencies to respond, while, of course, as you're closer to the coast, it may still be unsafe for a number of hours.
We talked a minute ago about your big concerns for the overnight period when it's dark. What is your number one concern or your number one priority for tomorrow when the sun comes up?
We really want people to shelter in place and give us an opportunity to get out there to survey the damage and ensure that our communities are safe. You know, we saw some of the damage from the possible tornadoes earlier today. We know that there are some areas that our resources as well as LCEC, FPL, other partners need to get to ensure that they're safe. People's first instinct is going to be to get home. We really just need the community to stay where they're at and give us an opportunity to get the appropriate partners out there into the field to ensure that it's safe for them to return home.
Mr. Abus, the season isn't over. I hate to point that out.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people are exhausted that I even said that, but there's still a very unusual time for the storms that we've experienced in the last few years. Are there any changes that could come down as a result of what we're learning about surge and what's happening in our community? For example, I heard someone mention, I wonder if something happened in Ian that made surges more of an issue for us, sediment that was pushed into the river, deposited and left behind. Are those discussions or those kinds of things happening among the emergency folks in our community?
We're having active discussions about the changes that we have seen. Some of them may be because of changes that occurred as a result of Hurricane Ian, but we're really looking community-wide at all of the potential inputs that may be leading to some of those changes. As you mentioned earlier, there's a lot to learn from every storm, and just like Helene, just like Debbie, just like Adalia, and just like Ian, we're going to go back and look at this storm and evaluate our response and preparedness, but also look kind of holistically at what we need to better understand across the community to be better prepared.
What do you think is the biggest thing that we learned from Ian now that we're a couple years behind it or beyond it and staring at another one tonight?
Again, I think that was really the first opportunity that the community has had to see storm surge. It's very different, to look at information or to look at a graphic. It's very different to see storm surge in your neighborhood. It's to see storm surge in a community you're with. When you have those types of visuals, it gives the term a whole different meaning and a greater understanding. And so I think the community really started to understand that when we do have storm surge forecasts like we had this evening from the National Hurricane Center, that we need to heed those warnings. And we are serious when we call for evacuations. It's not something we take lightly.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Mr. Abus, we really appreciate all the time you gave us here tonight. We know you've had a long couple of days. You have a long night ahead of you, and we appreciate all you're doing at the EOC. Thank you so much for informing our viewers of what's going on.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you, too.
Thank you. We have the governor about to give a live update, giving a live update on the hurricane right now. Let's listen.
Will help mitigate some of the storm surge. There isn't, you see it already developing, and there's going to continue to be storm surge both on the west coast and eventually on the east coast of Florida. Significant amount of rainfall on the northern part of the storm. There's already been 116 tornado warnings with 19 confirmed touchdowns throughout the state, 9 flash flood warnings, and 4 additional flood watches, with many, many more to come. Numerous counties have reported tornado damage. Peak storm surge is predicted to be between 5 and 13 feet, depending on where you are on the Gulf Coast of Florida. As of right now, the peak storm surge looks to be between the Charlotte-Lee County line up until in Manatee County. Prior to landfall, the state completed nearly 2,000 missions. Generators were sent to shelters. We have massive amounts of fuel reserves that are staged and ready to go, millions of gallons of gas. When the ports reopen, Florida Highway Patrol will be standing by to escort fuel trucks to service stations so that people will have access to fuel as they return to their homes. The Florida Department of Transportation is staged and ready to go. As soon as the storm passes, they have 150 will go to clear the bridges, 402 cut and toss personnel, and over 1,000 generators and 350 pieces of heavy equipment and trucks. We have massive amounts of search and rescue equipment and personnel. Hope that there's not a big need for that, but we're prepared for that. And that's not just our state and local, it's also our National Guard, our State Guard. We have about 9,000 National Guard personnel between Florida and other states. We also have Florida Highway Patrol, Fish and Wildlife, Department of Law Enforcement, and of course our Florida State Guard. There was a lot of questions about pre-staging linemen, which is our practice here in Florida, given that you have a lot of linemen working for Hurricane Helene in places like Georgia and North Carolina. I'm happy to report that we have over 50,000 linemen that are in the state of Florida, and as soon as it's safe to do so, they will commence with power restoration. Power outages, you're going to continue to see a lot more power outages over the course of tonight and into tomorrow morning. Now, at this point, it's too dangerous to evacuate safely, so you have to shelter in place and just hunker down. Category 3 storm for most places instruction, likely the building is going to be able to withstand it. But if you start to get in a situation where trees are snapping, power's popping, you do have to treat it like a tornado. And then if you are in a tornado warning, that's a duck and cover in a place that's safe in your structure. Those can be very, very dangerous, even if you are inside in cover. Stay inside and stay off the roads. Floodwaters and rushing storm surge are very dangerous. And I would say that's even more so in spite of everything the state did to help these local communities hit by Helene remove a lot of debris, and they did move a lot of debris over the last 72 hours. You're going to have new debris created, and you still have some of that old debris in some of those places. So there's going to be hazards in the storm surge and in the flood waters. Stay put until the storm is passed. If you are in Sarasota, Manatee, some of those areas where the eye of the storm is going, it may be where things calm down for a minute. Just understand that means you're in the eye. It's going to go back and get really nasty very soon. So don't go outdoors until it is confirmed safe. You can emergency management officials about that one. Power outages are going to happen, as I mentioned. So please, if you're using a generator, make sure that you're using it safely. Do not run the generator inside your home. That can be fatal. Make sure it's outside the home at a safe distance from windows and doorways. If you see dangerous conditions, please report those to your local authorities so that they can help protect people and mitigate it. So the storm is here. It's time for everybody to hunker down. I know we've got massive amounts of resources that have been prepared for this storm. People are tired because of having to deal with Hurricane Helene, and yet all I've seen is people just, we're not going to be denied, we're going to get the job done. So I really appreciate everybody that's worked so hard on the heels of Helene to prepare for this storm and to be ready to go. And you will see that in action very shortly as this storm passes. Okay, Kevin Guthrie.